Just like they are trying to add to the word through the Talmud, many people find themselves adding to the word through the Apocrypha. Now, in the book of Jubilees, it says you are supposed to abstain from marital relations on the Sabbath or on the Shabbat. And many of these people will also quote Isaiah chapter 58, verses 13 through 14, where it talks about if you abstain from doing your pleasure and you essentially delight in my Sabbath, there's going to be a reward for you. So they interpret the whole doing your pleasure thing as, having pleasure with your spouse. Legally, I might add. Even though that wasn't the intended purpose of that passage to begin with. In fact, if it were just your pleasure, it would be talking about a specific desire during the Sabbath day that violates the law and the prophets. What takes your focus off of Yahweh that isn't about Him on Shabbat? Are you not congregating or fellowshipping like it is commanded on the Shabbat? Are you going to events, rallies, potentially working because you want to make a little bit of extra money? Those are the kinds of things that would constitute doing your pleasure on the Shabbat. Whereas marital relations provide an excellent illustration of the passion that we're supposed to have with Yahweh. And therefore, that isn't just our pleasure, it's a form of glorifying Him. And I'll show you how. A perfect example of this is the fact that Yahweh gives Adam and Eve the institution of marriage right before He creates Shabbat. So if we make those logical linkings together, essentially, marital intimacy was created in conjunction with the holy day of rest. So of course Yahweh is going to be okay with you having that on the holy day of rest. There is no direct prohibition on this in Scripture. You don't see anywhere where it says in Tanakh, or what we call the Old Testament, that you can't enjoy that on Shabbat. And of course, I'm referring to the logical progression of the narrative between Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26 and chapter 2 and verse 3. So in Isaiah or Yeshayahu chapter 56, we read about the eunuchs and the Gentiles who decide to keep the Sabbaths of Yah. And I'm not going to talk about Philip and Acts today and why he was legally allowed to baptize the eunuch. But we see in verse 3, it says, "Let no foreigner who is bound to Yahweh say, Yahweh will surely exclude me from His people, and let no eunuch complain, I am only a dry tree." And look at the next verse, verse 4, "For this is what Yahweh says to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths." So He's saying that they can still have the full enjoyment of the Sabbath without marital intimacy, because that could be one of the things that you enjoy the Sabbath with. This can essentially be logically deduced from the text, but you don't need to have it. That's it. And in verse 5, "And who choose what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant, to them I will give within my temple and its walls a memorial and a name. Better than sons and daughters, I will give them an everlasting name that will endure forever." And we see that Yeshua in Revelation, He's going to give you a name that you don't even know about now, and it's going to be an everlasting name. It says, "And foreigners who bind themselves to Yahweh, to minister to Him, to love the name of Yahweh, to be His servants, all who keep the Sabbath without desecrating it, and hold fast to my covenant, and engaging in marital intimacy on the Sabbath is not a form of desecrating the Sabbath." An example of desecrating the Sabbath would be making familial relatives work, making people who are on your property work, making your animals and livestock work. Doing things that just get your body going but have no relation to the word of Yahweh whatsoever. And He says, "These I will bring to my holy mountain and give them joy in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations." So Yahweh is going to invite all peoples who hold fast to His covenant to sacrifice at His fourth Levitical temple, I might call it, because it appears as though there's going to be a polytheistic temple that's coming to Israel in these, what we might call, quote unquote, end times, a perverted temple, because it won't be worshiping Yahweh. It will be worshiping several gods, whether you're Islamic or Catholic or Christian or Jewish. It'll essentially be a temple with a bunch of syncretism, like they had in the nations, like the pagans do. And so in verse 8, it says, "The sovereign Yahweh declares, He who gathers the exiles of Israel, I will gather still others to them besides those already gathered." And this is why Yeshua said, there are those who are not of this fold that are still considered my people. There are sheep that are not of this fold, but they're still mine. Because there are still conversions yet to happen. There are still people yet to see the light. There are still yet people to come to the truth. But when we promote doctrines like this, these insane prohibitions that don't exist, and add these as a burden, as a yoke on people that not even our forefathers knew, as Peter talked about in Acts 15 when he was rebuking the Pharisaical group for putting circumcision as a thing that was necessary for salvation, then we turn people off effectively from the scriptures. God bless.